I had to rewrite this intro because I was worried it was going on way too long about something that wasn't the point of this video. Also, some people who voted in the poll may notice that I changed the title of this one, which happened for similar reasons. Basically, my original selling point on this one was about, hey, having trouble leaving Harry Potter behind because you're attached to a really good fantasy series? Read this really good fantasy series instead, but that feels disingenuous. The only thing I'll keep is me reiterating to my subscribers that J.K. Rowling is a horrible person. And before someone tells me she's not horrible, she just has opinions you don't agree with, you're right, she does have opinions I don't agree with. Her opinions are that 75% of my friends shouldn't have rights. Okay, so like the Amnesty International thing happened right before I began recording the voiceover for this video. She's still doing that thing where she uses her Harry Potter money to scare people into keeping quiet about the impact her opinion is having on things, so scratch that. I'll call her out from across the pond, where I'm safe, as much as I damn well please. Anyways, let's talk about the actual subject of this video before I go on a tangent that's not at all the point. I'm here to do what I do best, which is talking about things I like in order to convince people to consume the media I enjoy. This one especially because I'd love to have more people give one of my favorite fantasy series a bit of love. I first found this one in 3rd grade while boredly looking through the classroom library for something to read during silent reading time. As with most kids, the insane looking cover art intrigued me. Cool fantasy monsters with shiny looking painted details. It drew me in like a magnet. And just like that, it was all over. This wasn't like with Emily Winsnap where I lost the time and energy to continue the series. I was 9 years old and undiagnosed. I read all 8 books by the next year. Harry Potter bored me as a kid to the point that I had to have it read to me by my sister to get through the first book, the only book in the series I've technically read. How did this niche fantasy series aimed at young children manage to grip me so tightly when a media juggernaut like Harry Potter could not? You see, it was because this series had everything. The cool world building, the well-written interpersonal relationships between the characters, the twists and turns, the betrayals, the blood and gore and characters actually being in danger of dying horribly at every step of the journey, and the underdogs rising up to resist a force that's hell-bent on keeping them down, all written by an author with a surprisingly good grasp of political themes in a fantasy setting and how different people and forces will act in trying times. And it even stars another trio of protagonists that one might insert the quote, "Why is it when there's trouble, it's always you three?" For those I'm trying to pull in with the reason of, please read this so you have an excuse to stop giving Joanne your money. This is a story of adventure in a medieval world, a quest to defeat a different kind of Dark Lord and bring peace back to the land. Let me tell y'all about Deltora Quest. Welcome to Geeky Yaps, a series where I talk at length about media I like a lot but don't have enough to say to justify it being its own independent video. Shows, games, movies, if I remember it, I'm making it everyone else's problem. And in today's episode, I'm going to be talking about my favorite childhood fantasy series of all time. This will be a spoiler-free yap because I genuinely want you guys to read this one. Deltora Quest and the world of Deltora in general is the brainchild of Emily Rada, an Australian fantasy author who also wrote Rowan of Rin, The Star of Deltora, and The Three Doors. I haven't read her works outside of Deltora Quest, though if they're anything like that series, I'm sure they're worth the read entirely. Just like with my Emily Winsnap video, I'm going to be using custom visuals since this is a non-visual medium, though before people who know about the series come at me about something, let me address the elephant in the room. There was an anime adaptation of the series. They used to play reruns of it on the Hub when I was a kid, so I experienced it that way. And as a kid, I thought it was fine, but as an adult rewatching this, I can't begin to dissect this thing without this yap warranting a much larger runtime than usual, so I'd recommend watching my mutual Miles, aka Bogosword's video essay on this war crime if you have 3 hours to spare, which I know y'all do because I know why y'all are subscribed to me in the first place. Though the video essay does have spoilers for the books, and again, I genuinely want you guys to read the series and experience things firsthand. Anyways, I will be using Miles' designs of the characters as visual aids in this video because the designs are very good and I love them. I do have my own designs I'm using for like the actual fan art, but I've only ever designed and drawn the main 3 because of a project I did in college. Me and a few other students put together a fake pitch presentation like we were trying to get some corporate entertainment people to greenlight a Deltora Quest movie. It was a lot of fun. I'm also using Miles' art because I want an excuse to mention that he's doing an entire freaking fan game of the series. It's been insanely cool to see all the concept art and work in progress, pixel sprites. Also, there's memes that only 2 people will understand. Those 2 people are me and Miles. The project is called Deltora Vivisection, with all the updates being on a Tumblr blog of the same name. Go and check it out, it's the coolest thing. Also, Miles has a lot more of the cast fully drawn, so that's another reason I'll be using his art for visuals. Now, what's the story actually about? Let's get the summary out of the way so I can explain why this generic-sounding premise is actually amazing. Deltora Quest is about the land of Deltora, a kingdom currently under the ruthless control of the evil Shadow Lord. Yes, that's his actual name. Our main character, Leaf, is a young boy from the capital city of Dell, and he's going on a quest to try and repair and restore the only magic artifact capable of driving the Shadow Lord out of Deltora, the famous Belt of Deltora. The Shadow Lord is actually a really cool villain to me because it's not just some guy or an evil wizard or something. I mean, he was at one point, but his quest for power and conquest led to him being twisted into some eldritch entity that now genetically engineers monsters and soldiers to fulfill his plans, while also poisoning and polluting the environment everywhere he goes. So he's effectively some colonizing force of nature more than a man. Honestly, I think comparing him to Hexus from Fern Gully is more apt than not. He uses the state of his being to his advantage, because this isn't the first time he's tried to take over Deltora. The problem is the first time he did so, a blacksmith named Aiden came up with an idea to best him. You see, Deltora is divided into 7 territories, each inhabited by 7 tribes. There's the Dell, the Rallids, the Plains, the Mir, the Dreadgnomes, the Taurens, and the Jawless. Each had a spiritual stone with magic powers, and Aiden believed if he could affix them to a belt as well as unite the tribes, it would multiply their powers and drive the Shadow Lord out. He went all around collecting each gem from every tribe. Whoever didn't believe in his cause outright, he'd do challenges and favors to gain their trust. My favorite was the Mir being like, go fight a sand beast and then we'll give you the lapis lazuli. Sand beasts, or Teriocti, are these giant praying mantis looking monsters that are super dangerous and will rip a man to shreds. So the idea here is there's no way he can do that by himself. All the Mirror are gathered on the walls around the desert to watch what's sure to be the fantasy equivalent of a gladiator being forced to fight a pride of lions for entertainment. And then a goddamn dragon comes out of nowhere, pounces on the sand beast, and kills it. So they're like, oh man, that dragon showing up has to be some fate and destiny shit, and decided to let him have the lapis. Eventually, he united the 7 tribes and drove the Shadow Lord out with the power of unity and the belt itself. And then Aiden became the first king of the now united Deltora. By the way, the Del tribe and the Tauren tribe are the reason the whole land is named Deltora. The tribes are so close, in fact, that the king and queen of Deltora are always a Del man from Aiden's family line and a Tauren woman as queen. But here's where the Shadow Lord being a force of nature and an eldritch entity comes into play, because he was only driven out, not killed. And he's patient. As the book itself says, to its anger and envy, 1,000 years is like the blink of an eye. So he waits until the story of his defeat goes from being told as real history to simply being some fairy tale of the early days of Deltora's existence. He waits until an age where the king of Deltora no longer wears the belt full time, and simply dons it for the coronation ceremony before locking it up in a special room in the palace for safekeeping. Our most recent king is named Endon, and the same coronation ceremony was done for him. But that's not all the Shadow Lord does. He also places one of his own servants in the palace. A line of them, actually, who each serve as a long line of retainers to the king, slowly taking over the burden of ruling the kingdom and all the hard work. Our most recent one is named Prandine, and he is King Endon's advisor. An illusion is placed over the town of Dell itself, with the king and queen not being allowed to leave the palace. All they see from their home is a prosperous city, as it's always been. In reality, Prandine's oversight has led to famine and poverty. There's a scene in the first book that details how Jared, a servant and friend of Endon, left the palace and saw firsthand a crowd of starving citizens clambering around a trash cart to grab what meager scraps they could. The citizens of the capital city live in squalor, and have been led to believe that the king and queen don't care. And in a sense, that is true. The royalty of Dell have taken a more passive role, and arguably actually don't care about what's happening. But again, they're led to believe that everything is running smoothly. So how could they know? This is all to the Shadow Lord's design, because it's not enough to overthrow the king and queen. The people who are loyal to the royal family might rise up against the Shadow Lord and rebel, after all. He has to be smarter than that. So, he systemically, for years, tarnishes the image of the royal family to their people, and gives them a more tangible reason to distrust them, to the point of not caring if anything happens to King Endon and Queen Sharn. Combined with the whole more fairy tale than history thing that happens, with the Shadow Lord's plans straight up leaving the royal line uneducated in the matter of, wait, why did we used to wear the belts full time anyways? The Shadow Lord is also making sure the people of Dell, commoners and royalty alike, forget their history and forget why the line of Aiden wears the belt in the first place, and why them being alive is kinda super important. And on top of that, everyone in the palace is left out of the loop for so long that the whole Shadow Lord hostile takeover catches them completely off guard. For all my One Piece fans in the crowd, it's a very Dressrosa or even Alabasta type of plan at play here. In one night, the Shadow Lord strikes. The belt is stolen and destroyed. Everyone at the palace who doesn't fall in line with the Shadow Lord is slaughtered, and the king and queen are only able to escape with the help of Endon's friend Jared and his wife Anna, who sneak them out of the palace. But here's the big twist. The belt isn't totally destroyed, because the gems can't be destroyed, you know, being magic and all. Instead, the Shadow Lord resorts to taking the gems from the belt and hiding them in the 7 most dangerous places across Deltora, and the first 7 books in the series are named for these dangerous places. The Forest of Silence, the Lake of Tears, the City of the Rats, the Shifting Sands, Dread Mountain, the Maze of the Beast, and the Valley of the Lost. And these gems stay hidden for nearly 16 years. Because after that amount of time, a young boy in the city of Dell is told the truth. We meet our main character, Leaf. He's upset with the state of things, but doesn't do much to rebel aside from staying up past curfew and sneaking past the Shadow Lord's Grey Guards in order to get home safe. What else is there for a 16-year-old nobody from the capital to do? He may be rebellious, but he's not stupid. He canonically has watched public executions and knows what can happen if he tries to act on his feelings towards authority and gets caught by the Grey Guards. Then, on the day he comes of age, his parents come clean about something to him. You see, Leaf is the son of a blacksmith and was trained in the trade. But he's specifically the son of a blacksmith named Jared. That's right, Leaf's parents are friends of the last king of Deltora and had helped him escape. Over the past 16 years, Jared has been reforging the Belt of Deltora using scraps that he found on the day that everything happened. He's only got the frame of it, though. There's still the issue of looking for the gems, and that's why they're telling Leaf all of this. See, Jared had planned to go out and find the gems himself, but an injury a few years back has left him physically unable to make the journey. So now, in classic fantasy adventure fashion, he must entrust his teenage son with the responsibility. He won't be going alone, though. There's some beggar who lives by the forge named Barda, and Leaf has only known him as some homeless guy his parents took pity on and allowed him to hang out by the forge where it's warm and dry. This was all a disguise. The moment Barda removes his ragged cloak, he's a big buff dude in combat-ready garb. It turns out, when the Shadow Lord slaughtered the royal guard during his coup, there was one survivor. And that was Barda. He had fled the palace a little before the whole thing happened because his mother had just died. She'd been whispering about how she'd overheard something and knew something bad was about to happen, i.e. the coup, and Barda was convinced her turning up dead had to do with this. So he just narrowly avoided everything, only meeting Jared and Anna hours later after they'd escaped with the king and queen. Endon and Sharn had disappeared by this point, of course. Fun fact, Barda initially wanted to go by himself when Jared had become too injured to go on the quest, but Jared insisted on having Leaf go with him just to be safe. So now Barda has to play babysitter to this rebellious 16-year-old in this fantasy epic, as much as Leaf is totally stoked to go. Though as it turns out, they're both pretty out of their depth. The first place they head to is the Forest of Silence, even though Jared wanted them to go there last. It's the gem location that's closest to the city of Dell, and apparently there's less guards there because they've lost so many guards going through the forest.
Foreshadowing is a literary device, and
there's a reason these places are so dangerous, and this is what I love about this series. We start by immediately establishing how daunting a task this quest is going to be, by having Leaf and Barda immediately get their shit rocked by the native monsters of the forest, the Wen. One bite and they're entirely paralyzed and left on the forest floor to get eaten by an even bigger monster, the Wen Bar. Of course, they had no idea about this, but someone takes the time to tell them. And this is where we get introduced to objectively the best character of the main 3, Jasmine. She's a girl whose family lived in the Forest of Silence, but a squad of Grey Guards coming through the woods took her parents away as slaves when she was very young. She narrowly avoided the same fate by staying hidden in the bushes, just like her mother told her. And since then, she's grown up alone, stealing supplies from other Grey Guards who have been killed by the monsters of the woods, and being a fun subversion of the grizzled survivalist trope by virtue of her being a malnourished teenage girl. Crediting Miles for that realization because Jasmine fitting into that trope hadn't clicked for me when rereading the series. Jasmine's been left in the unforgiving Forest of Silence with only Cree and Philly as companions. Cree is her raven, and Philly is her small furred thing. That's literally how they describe him. He's just a creature. I chose to interpret him looking like this. So Jasmine has been hardened by her time alone in one of the most dangerous places in Deltora, and was very well going to leave Barda and Leaf for dead because they were stupid, and who cares if they die. But after stealing Leaf's cloak that his mother gave him and running off, she gets second thoughts. After all, Grey Guards don't have mothers. So Leaf and Barda can't be Grey Guards, so she apprehensively goes back to give Leaf and Barda the antidote so they can move and narrowly escape the Wen Bar when it comes to have its dinner. And thus, we have our main trio of troublesome heroes. A rebellious teenage boy armed with nothing but a sword he only kinda knows how to use, the cloak his mother gave him, and an empty belt around his waist. A former palace guard hoping to make up for the night he couldn't save his kingdom from damnation and make sure his mother and her warning didn't die in vain. and a wild girl with her animal companions, who's slow to trust and much quicker to pull one of her daggers on you if she believes she or her companions are in danger. And these three are Del Toro's only hope of retrieving the gems, restoring the belt, and casting out the Shadow Lord once and for all. And this is the part where I stop summarizing the books, because I don't want to pull an Emily Winsnap and just tell you everything about it to get you to read it, because there's some aspects of this series that are just better if you go in not knowing what's going to happen, especially later into the series. I'm not even kidding, Del Toro Quest may have one of the best twist villains I've ever seen in a series aimed at young readers, but that's not the only thing it does really well. For my non-American watchers, we have this thing here called the ACT. It's a standardized test you need to take for college application purposes, and there's a whole lot of aspects of it that are weird, to say the least. But what's important here is that there's a version of it where it ends with a written essay question. And that's the one that I took. And the question I got on my test was, do you think any stories are truly original? And my philosophy was that no, nothing is truly original. What makes any story feel original, or fresh and new, is how you execute those ideas. And I had used Del Toro Quest as a main talking point in regards to this philosophy. The series takes these fantasy tropes we've seen over and over and turns them on their head, or just twists them up enough for it to be really fun and fresh. It's one thing to have an evil army the villain uses to do their bidding. Lord of the Rings has that with its orcs, but there's taking elves and twisting them into these creatures that are still like very much living beings with thoughts and feelings, even if those thoughts and feelings have been twisted by Sauron into killing and maiming. But then there's the Shadow Lord literally making all his Grey Guards in factories. This guy is such a control freak that he barely trusts real people to do his bidding. He has to make his army. This is exemplified by the fact that when you kill a guard, they just kind of melt. Or poof, I don't know. This is the one thing in the anime they did that I still like as an adult. And yeah, there's some natural-born people who do serve them, but they're either heavily manipulated into doing so, already pretty evil people and only need a promise of Shadow Lord Warlock magic to serve them, or serve him through a third party. I'm purposefully keeping this vague so as not to spoil. But even the advisors that the Shadow Lord sends in to do his long con at the start of this are all made by him. See, on top of the Grey Guards, the Shadow Lord has also made these shape-shifting things called owls. They're terrifying. They're like mimics, but they can be people, if that helps you visualize. And all the royal advisors the Shadow Lord put up to the task of systemically tarnishing the image of the royal family are these shape-shifting creatures. It's nuts, dude. Even the people the Shadow Lord trusts the most are factory-made to not be capable of betraying him. There's also the aspect of the quest that comes up briefly, I believe, but isn't really focused on until the last book because the gems are taking priority. That aspect being that Leaf, Barda, and Jasmine also need to find the missing heir. See, the big caveat to the belt is that its magic to banish the Shadow Lord will only work if it's being worn by the rightful heir to the throne. Since Endon and Sharn disappeared the night of the coup and were never heard from since, they don't know where they are or where their child is, but they know they're still alive. The belt still being there is proof of that. If Aiden's line were to die out, the belt would crumble to dust, and since the group still, has the belt, they can rest assured that there is an heir to look for in the first place. I will not talk more on this. Just know that this subplot's resolution is absolutely nuts, and it blew my damn mind as a kid. As did every other twist and turn in this goddamn series. There's so many other aspects of this story I haven't even touched on yet. One of the 7 tribes who try to stand up to the Shadow Lord, its people ending up either slaughtered or taken to the Shadowlands as slaves, with the one lone survivor still living in Deltora being a major character starting in Book 4. The city of Tora, home of the Tauran tribe, being just one giant complex carved from a single piece of marble with no seams or cracks throughout the whole place. Everything about Tom and his shop. Also Steven! It's Miles' fault for reminding me how goddamn cool Steven is as a character, and I can't say shit. Also the anachronisms of the world. This is a medieval setting, but they have a Mark Twain style riverboat like it's nothing. Honestly, that's one thing I wish they'd lean more into with this setting. Like, throw some more weird stuff in there. Let's have fried food while we're at it. So I forgot until I rewatched Miles' video again that they do in fact have fried food in Deltora. This is the second time he's had to remind me of this fact. Silly fun fact that I wasn't sure where to slot into this script, I actually tried to run a homebrew D&D campaign set in Deltora a while back. It was a bad end to AU where the main 3 lost and it's 20 years later or something, and a new set of people form a resistance with some of the characters from the series who managed to survive. This is how I first met Miles, actually. I saw his Deltora Quest fan art on Tumblr, asked if his commissions were open, and politely asked if I could commission him for a buttload of NPC art because I had no time at the time to draw stuff myself. myself. The campaign died after we got to the City of the Rats, unfortunately. Rip Gormeyer, your player would have shit his pants when I revealed what I had planned for him. All was not lost though, because I ended up reusing one of the NPCs in another campaign I'm playing with some friends. She went from an owl who failed her post and defected to the good side to a changeling who failed her post and defected to the good side. As you can see, I love this series a lot. It's taking every ounce of my being to keep this Yap session a controlled one so I don't just spoil the whole thing. It's one of those things where you want to tell everyone everything about it, but you can't because you want them to still, like, experience it themselves, so I'll force myself to stop here. Del Toro Quest is a very good book series. Its world building is great, the way it plays around with fantasy tropes is very refreshing and wonderful, and it's a series that's not too hard to read in one go if you have the time and capacity to do something crazy like that. I encourage you to check out your local library to see if they have any copies, since Barnes & Noble only sells the original series as ebooks now. The full omnibus is also available on the Internet Archive with their library book feature, meaning it's free to borrow with an account, and the omnibus is about as long as the Goblet of Fire, so it's not that long a read. I think that's about all I wish to say. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Also, follow Del Toro Vivisection on Tumblr if you want to see more of Miles' fan game development and some of the coolest stuff I've seen in relation to this series. Okay, bye!